Hello everyone, and welcome to the Homepage Network. I'm Rhonda Pearson. On Tuesday, April 24th, the Rotary Club of Wellsboro hosted a forum for 3 of the candidates running for state representative of the 68th Legislative District. The event took place at the Deane Center in Wellsboro. Coordinator for Rotary, Jim Tutak, opened the forum and the candidates were introduced. Republican candidate Dennis Weaver, Republican candidate Clint Owlett, and Democratic candidate Carrie Heath. Questions from the community were presented by moderator Phil Weber, and each candidate was given 3 minutes to respond. Homepage cameras were there to highlight a few of the questions.
The first question is from Jenny in Charleston, dealing with economic development. Many areas across the country have experienced economic devastation when major employers in the manufacturing sector leave the area. However, successful recovery seems to occur when diversity and local entrepreneurship is encouraged. For example, urban agriculture utilizing and repurposing abandoned factory space. What would you do to diversify the economic base in our district?
That's great. It's a great question, and diversification is exactly what is going to need to happen to continue to see growth in our area. I've been able to be a part of that as a family. We had a dairy farm, and we diversified and started a farmer's market. That was something that we chose to do, and we saw success from that, and so much so that we ended up focusing all of our time on that. The dairy industry is one industry. You know, it's an industry that's hurting right now, and they're diversifying a lot. There's a dairy farmer over in Bradford County that is no longer selling their milk to a co-op. They're making their own cheese and selling it right from their farm. And so it's a great way to diversify and be able to meet a need in the community. So there's a lot of ideas with that. One big thing that would help with that is better internet service in our rural communities, and maybe that's something we'll get to talk about sometime. But like this business that I'm talking about in Bradford County, this farm, they don't have great internet, and if they had better internet, they would be able to continue to market and sell broader base. So diversification is going to be huge. Being able to utilize some of these spaces, hopefully we can do that. But it's definitely something that the agriculture industry is definitely going to need to expound on as well. So thanks.
Being a dairy farmer and growing up on a dairy farm as a dairy farmer for 18 years, and the crisis that the dairy industry is facing today, we're at the point where it's more than just saving the dairy industry. It's about saving the family farm. And diversity is going to happen to save the family farm. I really believe that. And working in the manufactured housing business for 11 years, I've seen that in the manufactured housing business where I have people coming on the lot, and they are diversifying. We've got the hog business in this area right now that's huge. We've got farmers putting up hog houses. I hear that poultry might be coming back in the area. And I have a customer that was growing meat sheep. So we've got to become creative and come up with ways to diversify to offset the low milk prices. And I said a couple of weeks ago at one of our dairy forums, as a dairy farmer, do you really know what your bottom price is for milk? To where you can survive? Is it $12.50? And when it drops below that, what's your game plan to be able to survive that? So that's where diversity, we've got to come up with alternatives to be able to survive when the milk price drops below that profit margin for you. Could talk a little bit about economy too, and that's jobs. You know, did you know that 70% of the job positions that are available in this county and these counties do not require a bachelor's degree? So we have that 70% of that job force that we need to train and to bring back VOTEC schools, to bring back trade schools. My son went to VOTEC school, successful career today. My daughter graduated from Mansfield University, RN today. I personally have taken classes at Mansfield University. I have got my real estate license there. We need to find a way to get Mansfield University involved in training that 70% of the workforce and to fill those jobs that are available to the economy, to help to boost that economy. You drive around today, what do you see? For hire. For hire. I've talked to business owners. You know what their biggest concern is? Somebody shows up for work, they're there 2 days, and they're gone. Somebody shows up for work, they can't pass a drug screen. So we need to work hard at qualifying that 70% of the job force to fulfill the jobs that are in this area. We have the jobs. We just need to get those positions filled. And that creates quality of life. It creates purpose. And we'll probably get into the drug situation a little bit more tonight, but I think that's some of the answer to correcting the drug problem. It's creating quality of life for people, giving life value. So I'll end with that. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
So in order to rebuild the local economy, I think that we need to look at a slightly different model and look at having a sustainable economy rather than focusing on having one large factory come in and the whole local economy depending on that one factory. We need to look at diversifying all of the different job opportunities that are available. So encouraging small business growth is a big part of what I would be looking at. There's a new PA one-stop website for small businesses to have all of the services available in one location online where they can kind of cut through some of the red tape and regulations and get a new business up and running quickly. So that's one piece of it. Having really good infrastructure is another piece of it. You need things like good roads and bridges, water systems, sewer systems, in order for a business to be able to start. We also need modern high-tech infrastructure. So we need things like cell phone service and rural broadband. And there are ways to do that. If we look back at history, you can see that electricity was brought to this area and many others through things like a rural electric co-op. There's a possibility of doing the same thing to bring broadband to more of our area. And that's the sort of idea that I would like to pursue. I think that if we level the playing field, we make it possible for anybody, whether they're a dairy farmer or a welder or somebody who wants to open a knit shop, whatever the case may be, for them to be able to have that small business and employ 2 or 3 or 10 employees, and in that way make the whole fabric of our economy stronger by having all of these different businesses that work together, and we build each other up in that way. So that's my vision for that.
Okay, this is from Sean from Richmond Township. It's in the decision-making process. How do you plan on deciding how to vote? How much weight will you give to factors such as constituent opinions and your own beliefs? As an example to walk through, in a recent Gazette poll, 84% of readers supports legalizing marijuana. 70% of these were for any use. How would you vote on legalizing all uses of marijuana? People, please describe your vote and why or why not.
Wow, that's a great question. It's really kind of 2 questions, so let me try to divide up my time equally here. The first part of the question, how I would decide how to vote on something. I am a scholar in a lot of ways, so I would tend to do a lot of research. The poll that was in the Gazette recently, that's not really what we would call a scientific poll, because it just depends on who answered it that day. So I would want to look at having a little bit better gathering of information from the constituents in the area to see where people stand on any particular issue. I do understand that I represent everyone in the area, not just people who agree with me. So it's important to find out where all of the constituents in the 68th stand on a particular issue. I don't want to misrepresent all of you. So I hope that answers that part of the question. As far as marijuana, I am in favor of decriminalizing marijuana. That doesn't mean making it legal for recreational use. It's part of the process of kind of taking away some of the restrictions that are currently on marijuana. So I am for medical marijuana. I have seen some pretty miraculous things that have happened with marijuana, and there are some students that I used to work with who I wish could have had that available to them 5-10 years ago if that hadn't been held up. By Matt Baker, actually. So there are really important benefits to that particular drug. There are some downsides too. So that's why I kind of fall in the middle with it. I'm not necessarily for legalizing it completely for recreational use, but I do think that we need to decriminalize and look at some of the laws that we have in place right now and make them up to date a little bit more to what the average person believes.
So a couple years ago, I went down to Harrisburg and met with Representative Baker and at his office down there, and had a nice long chat about how he makes decisions, because I was very curious about that. And he said, Clint, you have to balance your constituents, your convictions, and your caucus. Those are the three things that you always have to balance in every decision that you make. And he said you have to make sure that you are listening to your constituents. That's the most important. They're the people that you're representing, and they're sending you there. And then you can work in your convictions, and you need to balance that in there. And then thirdly, you have your caucus that you also have to work with. So it's a juggling act, but the number one thing is making sure that you're working with and for your constituents. As far as the medical marijuana and recreational, this was something that Representative Baker had a lot more information than we all have. And how he was coming to his conclusions, we never chatted about that. But he definitely had the most information out of anybody in this room. And I tend to think that helped him make a decision. As far as recreational, I was in Colorado back in the fall, where it's legalized, and we were looking at some property out there for a group that I was with, and we met with a doctor out there, and she said that 70% of the patients that she sees that come in her door have some reason that they're there is related to marijuana. So she sees it as just such a negative impact on their community and their culture within their community. And that scares me. So the fact of the matter is the medical marijuana bill passed, and it's going to be law. The big thing for me is making sure from here on out, I really personally don't want to see us turn into Colorado, where our doctors and our physicians are just overrun with issues and folks that are struggling with that, and basically abusing it. So that's where I'm at on that, and I realize I may not be in the popular party on that, but those are my thoughts and my convictions on that. But there again, like Representative Baker said, you have to work with your constituents and understand where they're coming from and listen to them through the whole process. So thanks.
We have a great group of candidates that are campaigning for this position, and you voters have a tough job. You really do. We share a lot of the same values, and we're different in some ways. I'm the working class guy. That's what I've been preaching on my campaign. So, and you have to look at the other candidates' views as well, and you have to vote your conscience. And I know Clint talked about your constituents and listening to your constituents. Yes, that's part of this responsibility, but we still have our own personal values that we have to give account for, and we have to. Everything's got to be considered and brought into perspective. As far as marijuana, medical marijuana is now legal in Pennsylvania, and there are a lot of health benefits to medical marijuana. I've had friends that have had some serious issues and have been really, really helped with medical marijuana. But at the same time, I'm also very involved in the drug crisis that is going on in this communities and our districts, and to legalize marijuana, recreational marijuana right now would be a total disaster. I do not support that at all, and again, it's because of what I'm exposed to in the drug epidemic that we're facing, talking to the sheriff's departments, and it would be total disaster right now to legalize recreational marijuana. Thank you.
There are numerous questions dealing with the issue of abortion. I think I'll ask the simplest one, and it's from Crystal from Troy Borough. Are you pro-life or pro-choice? Why or why not?
I am pro-life, and I always have been and will be. I believe life begins at conception, and I believe that we need to protect the unborn children out there. There's been a number of bills that have been going through the House right now, and I would love to be able to be a part of those. But right now we don't have a voice down there in Harrisburg, and those bills are important, and I believe they protect those unborn children. I believe that it's something that we need to stand up for as a community, and as a man of faith, I believe I need to stand up for that, and I'm not going to shy away from it. It's who I am. It's what I believe, and so that's it for that. I could probably talk about something else, but I answered the question, right?
As I mentioned in my opening speech, I am definitely pro-life. I believe life starts at conception. The Word of God says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made in the mother's womb. And I would like to take that a step further. I believe it applies to the value of life. And again, Joanne and I be involved in the drug industry, and we've had multiple recovering addicts that come and speak at our meetings, and how many times they have been Narcaned to save a life. And if it was not for Narcan, they would not be here today. They are fully recovered addicts, and they are back with their families, they're raising their children, they have jobs, they're contributing to society. So it's the value of life. We are all here for a reason. None of us are a mistake. God has a plan for every one of us here, and it's quality of life, it's value of life.
I am pro-choice. I believe that women have the right to make their own medical decisions, and I believe that abortions should be safe, legal, and rare. When we make abortions illegal, women die. So if you say that you are against abortions because you're pro-life, I'd like to talk to you about the number of women who die in back alley abortions, and the women who die because they don't have the choice to terminate a pregnancy that will end in a case of septicemia for them, or any of 10 other possibilities that could happen that can end a woman's life if she chooses not to end the pregnancy. So I hope that you all will hold women's lives as important as you do a fetus's. In order to make those abortions less frequent, to make them more rare, we need to look at things like having better education. Safe sex education is really important, and it's not something that we do well here in Pennsylvania. We need to make contraceptives more affordable so that the occasion does not arise where a person finds themselves having to make such an incredibly painful and difficult decision. But when it comes down to making that decision, I don't think that the government gets to make that decision for you. I think that when it comes time, if you feel that you're in that position and you have to make that decision, that's between a woman, a doctor, and her God.
We'll hear more from the candidates after the break. Stay with us.
It's a small community, close-knit, it's beautiful. Now, as we join UPMC, it just opens a whole new world.
Together, UPMC and Susquehanna Health are bringing life-changing medicine to north central Pennsylvania.
UPMC brings extraordinary innovation to virtually every aspect of the work we do.
Exchanging ideas, sharing research, it's a tremendous opportunity to learn in real time with world-class experts.
Changing lives every day. UPMC Susquehanna.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
97% of our customers say they would recommend us to their family and friends.
Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
What will you do to move our community toward alternative energy sources? This is from Tiffany in Wellsboro.
It's a great question. So what we can do to move towards that is to put some emphasis in the budget and emphasis in marketing towards how we can make those renewable energy sources available in rural areas in particular. We have a great set of windmills that I think are wonderful. I think they're beautiful. If you've been out west, you can see them all over the plains and the hills out there. I would like to see more of that kind of development happen. That's one of those businesses that I think if we could draw a factory here that makes the components for windmills or for solar systems, that would bring great jobs to the area, and it would also encourage development of renewable energy resources in our area. So just a couple of different ideas that go along with that, but it's definitely something that I support. It's something that I know that the university is interested in, and I would love to explore the options and possibilities there.
You know, we definitely need to continue to research and develop alternative energy sources. The Clemens Food Group and Country View Farms are in the process of even doing that. I get to tour a farm here in a couple weeks that has put in a digester, which actually is going to use, it's kind of crazy, but the manure to create energy to be able to sustain that farm. And hopefully maybe even be able to sell some back. So there's a lot of new ideas out there that we can continue to research and develop, and it's exciting to be able to be a part of that. The one thing that I want to say with renewable energy resources is they need to work. If it's just a way to spend money and it's really not effective, then we need to make sure it's efficient and working. But if they are, then by all means we definitely need renewable energy resources. So thanks.
I live just up out of Mansfield, and I have a nice little house that's up on top of the hill. I can see down into Mansfield. You know what I can see from my deck? Windmills. 20 of them on the mountain. And where does all that energy go? Why doesn't that energy stay in our communities? I hear it goes all over the states. Same thing with our gas well industry. Why isn't that energy staying in our local communities? If there's any state issues there that we can work on to help that to happen, that would be fantastic. My neighbor has solar panels on his house. He pays for 90% of his heat with solar panels. I know dairy farmers that are self-sufficient because of digesters that they have on their farm to convert their manure into energy. So, yeah, we definitely need to tap into the resources that we have in this area and utilize it. And like I said, the wind energy, the gas well industry, let's find ways to keep that energy right here in our own communities. We could be self-sufficient. So, thank you.
Thank you. How will you, as a representative at the state level, ensure schools like Wellsboro Area High School get an appropriate amount of funds necessary to operate at its fullest level?
Boy, I'm getting the education questions tonight. So we have to make sure that they're funded. That's very important. Our schools are being taxed with a number of different programs that are challenging to them. The pension program. I was talking with a school administrator over in Troy the other day, and there's 60 cents on every dollar that they get goes towards their pensions, and it's crazy. So the schools are trying to operate on 40% of the money that they get. So in my mind, the best way to fund our schools and continue to make sure that they have the resources that they need is to tackle this pension issue head on. It's been kicked. The can has been kicked down the road for 10 years, and we need to make sure that we honor the commitments that we have made to people, but we cannot continue down the path that we're going. So we have to make hard decisions, and we have to not be afraid to do that. But if we're going to continue to be able to fund our schools, that right there is going to be the easiest and the best way to do that if we can get that under control. So pension reform is going to be something that's on my agenda and something that I would like to see happen just as soon as we can get down there. So, thanks.
Our schools are funded by property taxes. And I know property taxes is something that we're going to have to deal with in this area, and it maybe it will come up for a question too tonight. But I met with high school superintendents just a few weeks ago and had spent a couple hours with him, and we talked about some of the issues with school funding. And he had some charts there that he showed me. 75% of school budget, what do you think it goes for? It's pensions and health care. And there are two items that have not been addressed at the state and federal level. And guess what? We as the taxpayer pay the price. So what happens, they've got 25% of that budget left to actually fund their schools. And he shared with me one of the things that they had to do, and this is the trade-off. He could not hire another kindergarten teacher. He had to expand the size of his classroom. So we need to fight for the state funding that is available for our state schools to get our fair share of that in these districts in the northern tier, to continue to educate our children and to continue with a quality education. I've had 3 children that have graduated from schools in this area, 2 from Canton and 1 in Mansfield. And my daughter graduated from Mansfield University. But we need, they all have good quality educations, and we need to continue to provide funding for them to continue that quality education.
Thank you, gentlemen, for giving the statistics on what a mess our current system is. Let me just take a minute to explain how we got here. So about 15 years ago, our representatives voted in the middle of the night to give themselves a 50% increase in their pensions, and they gave teachers a 25% increase at the same time. They also voted to not pay for that for about 10 years. So what that's like is basically charging up your credit card over the maximum amount and then paying less than the minimum payment for 10 years. So what happens when you do that? You end up with a massive debt, and that's where we are right now. So what's happening is that the state is not funding the school districts, and therefore that pushes that liability, that cost off onto the school districts, which is how you end up with 60 to 75% of a school district's budget having to go to pay for those things. So whoever gets down to Harrisburg needs to understand that and needs to be able to take a strong stance on the state must pay its fair share in order to pay off this debt that it owes to the state's employees. And then we need to make sure we never do anything that's stupid again. So, thanks. I know a lot of people think that eliminating property taxes is the way to go to solve that problem, but the reality is that if you get rid of property taxes, that money has to be made up somehow in the state budget. And the most likely way that it would be made up is through sales taxes. Sales taxes are regressive, which means that they hurt people at the lowest incomes more than they do people at the higher incomes. So a family that makes around $66,000 a year would end up paying about $350 more per year in taxes if property taxes were replaced with sales taxes. So I know that the idea of eliminating property taxes sounds really positive, but in the long run it would be terrible for people in our area. So I think that we have to be creative and come up with some other solutions in order to make up that budget deficit and to take this terrible burden off of our school districts.
For more information about the candidates, visit the link listed below. We'd like to thank the Rotary Club of Wellsboro and the Deane Center for Performing Arts for hosting this informative event. Thank you for joining us today on the Homepage Network.
Welcome to the Sherwood Motel, conveniently located in historic downtown Wellsboro. Whether you're a business traveler or launching out on an unforgettable vacation experience, the Sherwood Motel is close to the famous Pennsylvania Grand Canyon and all the region's exciting outdoor activities. The Sherwood offers the finest accommodations in all of Canyon Country, with a variety of 42 spacious, smoke-free rooms and bed options, including some with large whirlpool bathtubs or 2-bedroom suites. The rooms are spacious, comfortable, and beautiful. The large heated outdoor pool is fun and inviting. The Sherwood Motel is within walking distance to Main Street shopping and many of the area's finest restaurants. Visit sherwoodmotel.org for details. The Sherwood Motel, your home away from home.